Right now, somewhere in the back of your mind, you know what time it is. You don't even have to check, you just know. 7:43 a.m., 2:17 p.m., 11:52 at night. The number is always there, quiet but constant, like a second heartbeat you never asked for. But here is something nobody ever told you. For 300,000 years of human history, that number did not exist. Not approximately, not in a different form, not measured differently. It simply did not exist. Your ancestors woke up when the light came. They slept when the darkness arrived. They ate when they were hungry. They stopped when their body said stop. Nobody was late, nobody was early, nobody was behind. Time, as you experience it every single day, is not a natural thing. It is an invention, and like most inventions that changed the world, it solved one problem and quietly created another that we are still paying for today. Let's go back to the beginning. For the vast majority of human existence, the only clock that mattered was the sky. Sunrise meant begin. Sunset meant rest. The moon told you where you were in the month. The stars told you where you were in the year. That was enough. For 300,000 years, that was more than enough. Ancient hunter-gatherer communities did not divide their days into hours or minutes. They divided them into light and dark, warm and cold, hungry and full. Their relationship with time was not something they managed. It was something they felt. Marshall Solon studied the daily rhythms of hunter-gatherer societies across multiple continents and found something that stopped him completely. These communities worked an average of 3 to 5 hours a day, not because they were lazy, not because they had less to do, but because when the work was done, it was done. There was no clock telling them they still had 4 hours left to fill. There was no guilt about the time they weren't using. Time was not a resource to manage. It was simply the container life moved through, and then came the sundial. The earliest sundials appeared in ancient Egypt and Babylon roughly 3,500 years ago. For the first time, humans began slicing the day into measurable pieces. But even then, time was local. Every city had its own noon. Every town read the sun differently. A traveler moving from one village to the next was moving through slightly different times. Nobody minded. Nobody needed to coordinate across distances. Life was still local. Time was still loose. Then came the mechanical clock. In the 13th century, the first mechanical clocks appeared on church towers across Europe. Their original purpose was not to tell people the time. It was to call them to prayer. But something else happened. For the first time, time became audible. The bell rang and every person within earshot heard the same hour at the same moment. Suddenly the day had a structure that existed outside the body. Outside hunger, outside light, outside how you actually felt. The clock did not ask how you were. The clock simply told you where you were supposed to be. And slowly, over the next few centuries, that bell began to govern everything. When you woke up, when you worked, when you ate, when you were allowed to rest. But it was the Industrial Revolution that truly broke the human relationship with time forever. Before factories, most people worked in rhythms. A farmer did not work by the hour. He worked by the season, by the weather, by the light. Some days were long, some days were short. The work itself determined the pace. Then the factory arrived, and the factory needed every worker at the same place, at the same moment. Factory owners quickly realized that the greatest threat to their productivity was not laziness. It was the human body's natural sense of time, so they removed it. Clocks were installed at the entrance of every factory. Workers were fined for arriving late. But breaks were scheduled to the minute. The body's rhythm was replaced with the machine's rhythm. For the first time in human history, a person could be wrong about what time it was. For the first time, your body could betray you simply by being tired at the wrong hour. Historian E.P. Thompson documented this transformation in his landmark 1967 essay on time, Work Discipline and Industrial Capitalism. He described how factory owners hired clock keepers whose only job was to monitor the workers' time. Some owners were documented setting the factory clock back in the morning to extend the working hours, and forward in the evening to shorten the break. Time was no longer neutral. It belonged to whoever owned it. Then, in 1883, the railroad companies of North America did something that changed the entire world. They created time zones. Not governments, not scientists, not philosophers, railroad companies. Because trains needed to run on a schedule, and a schedule required every station along the route to agree on what time it was. At exactly 12 noon on November 18, 1883, every clock in North America was reset to match one of 4 standardized zones. Centuries of local time, each town reading its own sun, were erased in a single afternoon. People called it the Day of Two Noons. Some celebrated it. Many were quietly horrified. A newspaper in Tennessee wrote that God's time was good enough and that no railroad company had the right to change it. But it was already done. The world had been synchronized. And once the world was synchronized, it could be optimized, measured, managed. Monetized. Your time became something that could be wasted, something that could be spent, something that belonged to someone else between the hours of 9 and 5. Think about what this did to the human body. You were built by 300,000 years of rising with the light and resting with the dark, of working until the work was done, and stopping when the body said stop, of eating when you were hungry and sleeping when you were tired. That body did not change when the clock arrived. It is still the same body, running the same ancient code, listening for signals that no longer govern your day. Your cortisol rises before dawn because your body expects you to move with the light. Your energy drops in the early afternoon because your body expects a rest that no longer exists. Your mind resists sleep at 10 because your body does not know about your 6 a.m. alarm. You are not bad at mornings. You are not lazy in the afternoon. You are not an insomniac. You are a 300,000-year-old body being asked to live by a 200-year-old schedule. And the cruelest part is what the clock did to the experience of living. Before time was measured, a day was not something you could fall behind on. There was no behind. There was only now. The meal you were eating, the fire, the person you were sitting beside, the person you were talking to. Presence was not a practice. It was simply reality. There was nothing else to be but here. The clock created elsewhere. The moment you can measure time, you can be somewhere other than now. You can be late. You can be early. You can be behind. You can be wasting it. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo spent decades studying what he called time perspective, the way humans relate to past, present, and future. He found that people who are dominated by clock time, who live in a constant state of measuring and managing minutes, show significantly higher rates of anxiety, stress, and an inability to experience pleasure in the present moment. The more precisely you track time, the less of it you actually feel. You were not built for this. No human was. For 300,000 years, your ancestors never once checked if they were using their day correctly. They simply lived it. Nobody was behind. Nobody was wasting it. Nobody lay awake at night wondering where the day went. The day did not go anywhere. They were in it completely until it was over. We built a cage and called it productivity. We filled it with alarms and deadlines and the quiet, persistent feeling that time is running out. And we handed it to every generation after us as though it were simply the way things are. It isn't. It is 200 years old, and somewhere inside you, beneath the calendar and the alarm and the clock, in the corner of your screen, there is a body that is 300,000 years old, still waiting for permission to simply exist without measuring the cost.